The rain hammered against the windows of Miller's diner like tiny fists demanding entry. Sarah wiped down the counter for the third time that evening, her movements automatic after 8 years of working the night shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their pale glow across the checkered floor. It was nearly midnight, and the diner was empty except for one man sitting alone in the corner booth. She had noticed him the moment he walked in, dripping wet and shivering. His clothes hung loosely on his thin frame, worn and faded like they had seen too many winters. His shoes had holes in them, and his hands trembled as he studied the menu with an intensity that broke her heart. Sarah had seen that look before, the look of someone trying to calculate which item cost the least, which could stretch the furthest, which required the gnawing hunger for just one more day. For 20 minutes, he just sat there, reading the same menu over and over. Sarah approached his table twice, ready to take his order, but each time he asked for just another minute. She understood. He was wrestling with a decision no one should have to make, whether to spend a few dollars in his pocket on food or save them for something else equally desperate. The man's face was weathered beyond his years, with deep lines carved around his eyes and mouth. His hair was gray at the temples, though he couldn't have been older than 40. There was something gentle about him despite his rough appearance, a kindness in his eyes that suggested he had once been someone different, someone who smiled easily and helped others without thinking twice. Sarah's manager, Rick, called her over to the counter. His voice was low but irritated. "That guy's been sitting there forever. If he's not ordering, tell him to leave. We're not running a homeless shelter." Sarah felt anger flash through her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. Rick had always been this way, more concerned with profit margins and people. She nodded but had no intention of following his order. Instead, she grabbed the coffee pot and walked back to the corner booth. The man looked up at her with apologetic eyes. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know I'm taking up space. I'll go." His voice was educated, refined even, which surprised her. This was someone who had fallen far. "Wait," Sarah said, her decision made in an instant. "Have you decided what you'd like?" The man glanced down at the menu one more time, then at the few crumpled bills in his hand. "Just coffee, please. Black." Sarah's heart squeezed. Coffee was $1.50. That's all he could afford. She wrote something on her notepad and smiled. "Coffee. Got it. Coming right up." But when she returned, she carried a full dinner, meatloaf with mashed potatoes, green beans, a side salad, and fresh bread. The man's eyes widened. "I didn't order this. There's been a mistake." Sarah set the plate down in front of him. "No mistake. It's on the house. Eat." Tears welled up in the man's eyes. "I can't let you do this. You'll get in trouble." Sarah glanced back at Rick, who was busy in the kitchen. "Let me worry about that. Please, just eat. You look like you need it." The man stared at the food like it was a miracle, then at Sarah with an expression of such profound gratitude that she had to look away. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You have no idea what this means." Sarah squeezed his shoulder gently. "We all need help sometimes. There's no shame in it." As she walked away, she decided she would pay for his meal out of her own tips if necessary. Some things mattered more than money. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness would change both their lives forever, or that the man eating quietly in the corner was carrying a secret that would soon turn her world upside down. The man ate slowly, savoring every bite as if committing the taste to memory. Sarah watched from behind the counter, pretending to organize receipts while keeping an eye on him. There was something haunting about the way he ate, carefully, deliberately, with a focused attention of someone who didn't know when their next meal might come. He used his napkin properly, cut his food into neat portions, and kept his elbows off the table. These were the manners of someone raised with refinement, now reduced to counting pennies for coffee. Rick emerged from the kitchen with his jacket on, ready to leave for the night. "I'm heading out. You close up. And Sarah." He pointed toward the corner booth. "Make sure he's gone soon. We don't need his type hanging around." Sarah nodded, biting back the words she wanted to say. The moment Rick's car pulled away from the parking lot, she felt herself relax. She refilled the man's coffee cup without asking. "Thank you," he said again, his voice steadier now that he had food in his stomach. "I don't usually." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Sarah understood. He didn't usually accept charity. He didn't usually look like this. He didn't usually sit in diners hoping someone would show mercy. "What's your name?" Sarah asked, pulling up a chair at his booth. The diner was empty, and something told her this man needed to talk more than he needed silence. He hesitated, then answered, David Morrison." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it carried weight, as if the name itself held a history he wasn't ready to share. "I'm Sarah Chan." She extended her hand, and he shook it with surprising firmness. His grip was warm now, no longer trembling. "That was the best meal I've had in months," David said, looking down at his empty plate. "I wish I could repay you somehow." Sarah shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Just pass it forward someday when you're back on your feet." David's expression darkened slightly. "Back on my feet," he repeated, as if testing the phrase. "I used to think that would happen. Now I'm not so sure." Sarah leaned forward. "Everybody hits rough patches. The economy's been tough on a lot of people." David laughed bitterly. "Rough patch. That's one way to put it. 3 years ago, I had everything, a career I loved, a home, respect. Then one decision, one terrible mistake, and it all vanished." Sarah wanted to ask what happened, but sensed it wasn't the right time. Instead, she asked, "Do you have family? Someone who could help?" David's jaw tightened. "I had a daughter, Emily. She'd be about your age now, maybe 30. I haven't seen her in 2 years. She thinks I'm dead." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You're alive," Sarah said gently. "Maybe you should let her know." David shook his head firmly. "She's better off thinking I'm gone. I destroyed everything. Her trust, her respect, our relationship. I can't face her like this. She deserves to remember me as I was, not what I've become." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She thought of her own father, who had passed away 5 years ago. She would give anything for one more conversation with him, no matter what state he was in. "I think you're wrong," she said quietly. "I think she'd rather have you alive and struggling than believe you're gone forever. Loss is permanent. Everything else can be fixed." David looked at her with such raw pain that Sarah had to steady herself. "You don't understand what I did. The shame I brought to her. It's better this way." Before Sarah could respond, David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn wallet. He opened it carefully and showed her a photograph protected in plastic, a young girl, maybe 7 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile, holding a trophy. "She won the spelling bee that year," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "She was so proud. I was so proud." Sarah studied the photo, then looked up at David's face. Something clicked in her memory. A news story from years ago, a scandal involving a prominent doctor. Her breath caught. "David Morrison," she said slowly. "The surgeon? The medical fraud case." David closed his wallet and looked away. "So you know." "Yes, that was me. Dr. David Morrison, once respected, now a cautionary tale about greed and stupidity." Sarah's mind raced. She remembered the headlines now. A brilliant cardiac surgeon accused of falsifying research data for a pharmaceutical company, taking bribes, putting patients at risk. The trial had been everywhere, a fall from grace that shocked the medical community. He had lost his license, his reputation, everything. "You went to prison," she said, the pieces falling into place. David nodded. 18 months. Got out 4 months ago. Can't practice medicine. Can't get hired anywhere decent. Nobody wants a convicted fraudster on their payroll, even for minimum wage jobs. So here I am, homeless, ashamed, alone. Sarah sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. The man sitting across from her was Dr. David Morrison, whose name had been splashed across newspapers and medical journals as a symbol of corruption and betrayal. Yet looking at him now, broken, humble, genuinely remorseful, she saw only a human being who had made catastrophic mistakes and was drowning in the consequences. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice free of judgment. She genuinely wanted to understand. David rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking exhausted beyond measure. "That's the question I ask myself every single night. Money, initially. The pharmaceutical company offered me $200,000 to fudge some data in my research. My wife had cancer, expensive treatments not covered by insurance. I told myself I was doing it for her, that I could save her life. His voice cracked, but she died anyway. 6 months after I took the money, she was gone, and I was left with blood money that couldn't save her and research that endangered other people's lives. The guilt ate me alive, but I was too much of a coward to come forward. So I kept going, kept taking their money, kept lying. Eventually, someone discovered the truth. Everything collapsed. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. It was an instinctive gesture of comfort, though she barely knew this man. Your daughter, Emily, where is she now? David's eyes filled with tears. She's here, actually, in the city. She moved here after the trial, changed her last name to her mother's maiden name, Reeves. She works at the university hospital as a nurse. She's building a life away from my shadow, away from the shame I brought to our family name. And she thinks you're dead because... Sarah prompted. David wiped his eyes roughly. Because when I got out of prison, I was diagnosed with cancer. Pancreatic. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same disease that killed my wife. The doctors gave me 6 months. That was 4 months ago. I told my lawyer to inform Emily that I had died in prison, that it was quick and painless. I didn't want her last memories of me to be visiting a dying ex-convict in some cheap hospice. Sarah felt her stomach drop. You're dying. David nodded slowly. Stage 4. Nothing they can do. I declined treatment. Couldn't afford it anyway. And honestly, it felt like justice. I destroyed lives with my greed. Maybe this is what I deserve. Sarah shook her head vehemently. Nobody deserves that. And you lied to your daughter about being dead? David, that's... Merciful, he interrupted. It's merciful. She's free now. Free to live without the weight of having a criminal father dying slowly in poverty. She can remember me from before, when I was someone worth remembering, when I was someone she could be proud of. Sarah stood up abruptly, anger and compassion warring inside her. That's not your decision to make. You don't get to decide what kind of closure she needs. You don't get to rob her of the chance to forgive you, or to say goodbye properly. David looked up at her with hollow eyes. Forgive me? Sarah, you're kind, but you don't understand. I didn't just commit fraud. People died because of my falsified research. A cardiac medication I helped approve had side effects I hid. 12 people died before the drug was pulled from the market. 12 families destroyed because I wanted money. Emily knows all this. How could she possibly forgive that? The weight of his confession settled over them like a heavy blanket. Sarah sat back down, her mind spinning. Have you asked her? Have you given her the chance? David shook his head. I can't. I won't. She's finally happy. I've been watching her from a distance. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help myself. She volunteers at the homeless shelter on weekends. She laughs with her colleagues. She's dating a good man. Her life is full and beautiful. I won't poison it with my presence. Sarah felt something stirring inside her, a sense of purpose she couldn't ignore. What if I told you that you're wrong? What if I told you that she talks about you? David's head snapped up. What? How would you know anything about? His eyes widened as understanding dawned. Do you know her? Do you know Emily? Sarah nodded slowly. She volunteers at the same homeless shelter I donate to every month. We've talked a few times. Last month, she mentioned her father. She said she had dreams where he was still alive, where she could tell him she understood why he made those choices, where she could tell him she forgave him. She said the hardest part wasn't the shame or the scandal. It was not getting to say goodbye properly. David's face crumpled. She said that? She dreams about me. Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling through her contacts. She's haunted by your death, David. The official story was that you died of a heart attack in prison. Quick and alone. She visits your empty grave every month. There's no body there, obviously, but she doesn't know that. She brings flowers and talks to a headstone marking a lie. Oh, God, David whispered, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. What have I done? I thought I were protecting her. I thought it was better this way. Sarah waited for his grief to subside, then spoke firmly. It's not too late. You're alive. She's here. You have maybe 2 months left, maybe less. But that's 2 months where the truth could set you both free. David looked up, his face streaked with tears. What if she hates me? What if seeing me like this, broken, dying, pathetic, destroys the good memories she has? Sarah squeezed his hand tighter. What if it doesn't? What if it gives her peace? David, you made terrible mistakes, but you're not a monster. You're a man who lost his way trying to save someone he loved. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it makes you human. Emily needs to know you're human, not the villain the media painted. The diner suddenly felt too small, too bright, too ordinary for the magnitude of what they were discussing. David sat frozen in the booth, caught between hope and fear. Sarah could see the war raging behind his eyes, the desperate desire to see his daughter again battling against the terror of causing her more pain. She had to act quickly before his fear won. Where are you staying? Sarah asked. David looked embarrassed. There's a shelter about 6 blocks from here. I've been there for 2 weeks. Before that, I was sleeping in the park until the weather got too cold. Sarah made a decision that would have seemed reckless if anyone else had suggested it, but felt absolutely right in this moment. You're not going back there tonight. I have a spare room in my apartment. It's small, but it's warm and dry. David immediately shook his head. I can't accept that. You've already done too much. You don't know me. For all you know, I could be dangerous. Sarah smiled sadly. You're dying of cancer and can barely stand up without shaking. I think I can handle you. Besides, if we're going to reconnect you with Emily, we need time to plan this properly. You can't just show up looking like... She stopped herself, but David finished the sentence. Looking like a homeless man who crawled out of a grave. His laugh was bitter but not unkind. You're right. I need to clean up. But Sarah, I have no money. I can't buy clothes or get a haircut or do any of the things that would make me presentable. Sarah was already thinking ahead. My father was about your size before he passed. His clothes are still in boxes in my closet. I couldn't bring myself to donate them. Maybe that's why. Maybe they were meant for you. Something shifted in David's expression, a flicker of hope breaking through the despair. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. I'm a stranger who committed crimes. Why would you risk your safety, your money, your time for someone like me? Sarah thought about her own father, about the lessons he had taught her about compassion and second chances. She thought about the random act of kindness that had sustained her through her own dark times. Because everyone deserves a chance to make things right before they die, she said simply. Because I believe people are more than the worst thing they've ever done. And because something tells me this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now. David's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they held gratitude rather than despair. How do I even approach Emily? What do I say? Hi, I'm not actually dead, just a liar who thought he knew better than you what you needed? Sarah considered this carefully. We don't ambush her. We reach out slowly, carefully. Maybe I contact her first. Tell her I met someone who knew her father, someone who has information she needs to hear. We set up a meeting in a public place where she feels safe. Then you tell her everything, the truth about the fraud, about why you did it, about the cancer, about faking your death. All of it. She'll hate me, David said, but there was less certainty in his voice now. Maybe initially, Sarah admitted. She'll probably be angry, confused, hurt. But eventually, she'll be grateful. Grateful that you trusted her with the truth. Grateful that she gets to say the things she's been saying to an empty grave. Grateful that she gets to decide how this story ends instead of having that choice stolen from her. David nodded slowly, his resolve building. Okay, let's do it. But I need a few days to prepare. I need to look like myself again, or at least like a version of myself she'd recognize. I need to practice what I'm going to say. I need to. He stopped as a wave of pain crossed his face. His hand went to his side, pressing against his abdomen. Sarah noticed immediately. When did you last take your pain medication? Couldn't afford to refill the prescription, David admitted through gritted teeth. Ran out 3 days ago. The pain comes and goes. Sarah felt anger flash through her, Anger at a healthcare system that could let a man suffer because he couldn't pay, anger at the circumstances that had brought David to this point, anger at how unfair life could be. That ends now. Tomorrow, we get you to a clinic. There are places that help people without insurance. David started protest, but Sarah held up her hand. If you're going to face Emily, you need to be able to stand upright without wincing. You need to be coherent and present. That means managing your pain. This isn't negotiable. The firmness in her voice reminded David of his late wife, the same loving stubbornness, the same refusal to let him suffer in silence. You remind me of her, he said quietly. My wife. She had that same quality, fierce compassion. Sarah helped him to his feet. He was unsteady, weakened by months of inadequate food and advancing disease, but there was new determination in his bearing. As they walked out of the diner into the cold night air, Sarah locked the door behind them and guided him toward her car. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Everything looked washed clean, renewed. During the short drive to her apartment, David was quiet, staring out the window at the city passing by. I know where she lives, he finally said. I've walked past her building dozens of times, but never had the courage to go in. Sometimes I see her leaving for work in the morning. She wears her hair up in a ponytail, just like she did when she was little. She still has the same purposeful walk, like she knows exactly where she's going and nothing can stop her. She sounds like you, Sarah observed. Determined. Strong. David smiled sadly. She gets that from her mother, not me. I fell apart when things got hard. I made unethical choices because I was scared and desperate. She's made of stronger stuff. They pulled up to Sarah's apartment building, a modest 3-story structure in a working-class neighborhood. As they climbed the stairs to her second-floor unit, David had to stop twice to catch his breath. Inside, the apartment was small but warm and welcoming. Pictures covered the walls. Sarah with her parents, Sarah at her nursing school graduation, Sarah with friends. David looked at them with a wistful expression of someone who had lost all his own photographs, all his own evidence of a life well lived. Sarah showed him to the spare room, which doubled as a storage space. It's not much, but the bed's comfortable. Bathroom's down the hall. I'll get my father's clothes out of the closet. As she rummaged through boxes, pulling out shirts and pants that might fit, David sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Sarah, he called out. She appeared in the doorway with an armful of clothes. Thank you. For seeing me as a person instead of a headline, for believing I'm worth saving, even though I'm dying, for giving me this chance to make things right with Emily. I don't have words big enough. Sarah set the clothes down beside him. You can thank me by fighting. Fight to stay alive long enough to rebuild that relationship. Fight through the pain and the shame and the fear. Fight to be the father she remembers, even if only for a few weeks. Can you do that? David looked up at her with eyes that had been dead for years but were slowly flickering back to life. Yes, he said. Yes, I can do that. 3 days later, Sarah stood outside the university hospital's main entrance, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. Beside her, David Morrison looked almost unrecognizable. Freshly shaved, his hair neatly trimmed, wearing clothes that actually fit, her father's gray slacks and blue button-down shirt. He looked dignified despite the weight loss and the pallor of illness. But it was his eyes that showed the biggest transformation. They held purpose now, and courage, and a desperate, fragile hope. Emily Reeves emerged from the hospital at exactly 3 o'clock, just as she did every day according to the schedule David had memorized from his months of distant observation. She was 32 years old, with her father's sharp features and her mother's warm brown eyes. She wore a nurse's scrubs under a practical jacket, and her dark hair was pulled back in the ponytail David had mentioned. She looked tired but content, someone who had rebuilt a life from ashes and found peace in helping others. Sarah had arranged this meeting carefully. She had contacted Emily through the homeless shelter, saying she had information about her father that couldn't be discussed over the phone. Emily had been skeptical but curious enough to agree to meet. She didn't know her father would be there. Sarah had debated telling her, but David had insisted. He didn't want Emily to have time to prepare her anger or rehearse her rejection. He wanted her raw, honest reaction, whatever it might be. Emily spotted Sarah first and walked over with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sarah, I appreciate you meeting me, but I'm confused about what this is about. You said you had information about my father, but has been dead for 4 months. Her voice carried the flat tone of someone who had accepted a painful truth and moved on. Sarah's stomach twisted with anxiety. "Emily, I need you to listen carefully and try to stay calm." That's when Emily's gaze shifted to the man standing beside Sarah. Her eyes scanned his face casually at first, then locked on with sudden, explosive recognition. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She took a step backward, her hand flying to her chest. "No," she whispered. "No, this is some kind of sick joke. He's dead. You're not. You can't be." David stepped forward slowly, his own eyes streaming with tears. "Emmy," he said, using the childhood nickname only he had ever called her. "It's me. I'm alive. I'm so sorry." Emily's shock transformed into fury so intense that Sarah instinctively moved closer, ready to intervene. "You're alive!" Emily's voice rose to a shout. "I mourned you. I cried at your grave. I talked to a headstone for months thinking you were underneath it, and you were alive?" People passing by stopped to stare, but Emily didn't care. "How could you do that to me? How could you let me think you were dead? Do you have any idea?" Her voice broke completely. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? Losing you, losing Mom, losing everything and everyone I loved? And it was a lie." David stood there taking her anger like he deserved every word, which he did. "I was trying to protect you," he said weakly. "Protect me." Emily screamed. "From what? From having a father? From having a choice about whether to forgive you or say goodbye? You took that choice away from me. You decided I was too weak to handle the truth, after everything I'd already survived." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. Sarah wanted to intervene but knew this was necessary. Emily needed to release years of pent-up grief and rage. David's voice was steady despite his tears. "You're right. About all of it. I was a coward. I made a terrible decision because I couldn't face my shame. I couldn't let you see what I'd become. Homeless, dying, broken. I wanted you to remember me as I was before I destroyed everything." Emily laughed bitterly. "Well, I don't remember you that way. I remember you as a father who chose money over morality, who chose pride over honesty, who chose to lie about being dead rather than trust me with the truth." Her words cut deep, but David didn't flinch. I know what you remember, and it kills me. But Emmy, I'm here now. I'm alive for maybe another month or 2. I have pancreatic cancer. That part is true. I'm dying, just on a slightly different timeline than I told my lawyer. I came back because I can't die with this lie between us. I need you to know I'm sorry. I need you to know that every decision I made that hurt you haunts me. I need you to have the choice I stole from you." Emily stood frozen, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "What choice?" David's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "The choice to forgive me or not. The choice to spend my last weeks with me or tell me to go to hell. The choice to say goodbye properly this time. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. But I won't die with you thinking I didn't love you enough to fight for one more chance to tell you the truth." The anger slowly drained from Emily's face, replaced by anguished confusion. "I don't know how to process this. You're alive. You're dying. You lied about dying. You're asking for forgiveness for lying about the dying you're actually doing. This is insane." Despite everything, David smiled slightly. "That's fair. It is insane. My life has been insane for years now. But Emily, please, just give me 5 minutes. If after that you never want to see me again, I'll disappear. Really disappear this time." Emily looked at Sarah, who had been standing silently through this entire exchange. "Did you know? Did you know he was alive?" Sarah nodded. "I met him 3 days ago at the diner where I work. He told me everything. The fraud, the prison, the cancer, the fake death. I convinced him to contact you because I knew you were still grieving. I thought you deserved the truth. If I was wrong, I'm sorry." Emily's expression softened slightly toward Sarah, then hardened again as she turned back to her father. 5 minutes. That's all you get." They moved to a bench outside the hospital entrance. David sat carefully, his body showing the strain of the emotional confrontation. Emily sat at the far end, maintaining distance, but she stayed. That itself was a small miracle. "Your mother and I married young," David began. "We were so in love, so certain we could handle anything together. When she got sick, it broke something in me. I couldn't accept that medicine couldn't save her, that all my training and knowledge were useless. When the pharmaceutical company approached me, they knew I was vulnerable. They offered me money to manipulate my research data, to hide side effects of a new cardiac drug they wanted approved." Emily listened with her arms crossed, but she was listening. "I told myself I was doing it for her treatments, for experimental therapies insurance wouldn't cover. But Emily, the truth is I did it because I felt powerless and angry, and money felt like control. Your mother died anyway, and I was left with blood money and corrupted research that later killed people. I couldn't face what I'd become. When the truth came out, when I went to prison, I saw the disappointment in your eyes. That hurt more than the trial, more than losing my career, more than anything. You were so ashamed of me. I couldn't bear it. So when I got diagnosed with cancer after my release, I saw an opportunity. I could let you be free of me. I could give you permission to remember me from before, from when I was someone you could be proud of." Emily's voice was thick with tears when she finally spoke. "You idiot! You complete idiot!" David looked up, uncertain if this was condemnation or something else. Emily continued, "Did it ever occur to you that I wasn't ashamed of you for making mistakes? I was ashamed because you wouldn't own them, because you made excuses and blamed circumstances, because you went to prison still acting like a victim instead of taking responsibility." David felt his heart contract. "I know. You're absolutely right." Emily wasn't finished. "And then you died. Or I thought you died, and I never got to tell you that I understood why you did it. That I didn't agree with it, but I understood. That desperate love for Mom that made you lose your way. I wanted to tell you that I forgave you, that people are more than their worst choices. But you took that away from me." "I'm giving it back now," David said softly. "I'm here. I'm alive. And I'm asking, do you forgive me? Not just for the fraud, but for everything. For the lie about my death. For the pain I've caused you. For being weak when I should have been strong." Emily stared at her father for a long moment. Emotions roared across her face. Anger, grief, love, resentment, hope. Finally, she moved close on the bench. Not touching him yet, but closer. "I forgive you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can forget, and I don't know if we can build back what we lost. But I forgive you because you're my father and I love you, and life's too short to die surrounded by lies and regrets." David broke completely then, sobbing like a child. Emily hesitated only a moment before putting her arms around him. Sarah, watching from a distance, wiped her own tears. This was why she had paid for a stranger's dinner, why she had opened her home to a convicted criminal, why she had risked this entire painful reunion. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness could save more than one person. Sometimes they could save entire families, entire futures, entire hearts. Over the next 6 weeks, David and Emily rebuilt their relationship one careful conversation at a time. Emily helped him move into a hospice facility where he could receive proper care. She visited every day after her shifts, sometimes just sitting quietly beside him, sometimes talking about memories, sometimes planning the funeral that would really happen this time. Sarah visited too, becoming a friend to both of them, the bridge that had brought them back together. David passed away on a Tuesday morning in early spring, with Emily holding one hand and Sarah holding the other. His last words were to his daughter, "You were always the best thing I ever did. Thank you for giving me the chance to say goodbye the right way." Emily squeezed his hand. "Thank you for coming back. Thank you for trusting me with the truth." At the real funeral, Emily stood before a gathering of the few people who had known David, the good man before the fall, the broken man after prison, and the redeemed man in his final weeks. She spoke about second chances, about the courage it takes to face your mistakes, about the father who had loved her enough to die twice and finally got it right the second time. Sarah sat in the back row, thinking about the rainy night when a stranger had walked into her diner. She thought about how close David had come to dying alone, unknown, and reconciled with the person he loved most. She thought about how a single decision to pay for someone's dinner had changed everything. Sometimes kindness to strangers isn't about them at all. Sometimes it's about becoming the person you want to be, the person who sees humanity in everyone, the person who believes in redemption even when redemption seems impossible. Sometimes a simple act of compassion can rewrite endings and heal wounds nobody else can see. As Emily placed flowers on her father's grave, a real grave this time, with a true story carved in stone, she looked back at Sarah and smiled. It was a smile of gratitude, of peace, of a heart that had finally found closure. And Sarah smiled back, knowing that whatever happened in her life from this point forward, she had been exactly where she needed to be on that rainy Tuesday night. She had paid for a stranger's dinner. But what she had really done was help a father and daughter find their way back to each other before time ran out. And that was worth everything.